What's up guys, Excalibur here and welcome back to Star Ocean Anamnesis. So, it's time for another character guide, and this time we'll be taking a look at Celine Jules. As always, I've linked the Star Ocean Anamnesis English Resources Guide in the description. Highly recommend you go check it out because it contains a lot of useful information. But, without further ado, let's get started. Celine is an offensive invoker who mainly focuses on the light element. Her first talent, Treasure Hunter, increases the int stat of the entire party by 30%. Right now, she's one of the only invokers who can actually increase the party's int stat, which makes it very nice. It's a pretty large buff too. Her second talent, Enchanted Symbology, gives a 25% chance to add silence to all of her attacks. Silence is a status ailment that completely disables the enemy's attacks. So if this ever does proc, that basically means free damage on whatever you're fighting. Her third talent, A Lady's Poise, increases her own int damage dealt by 20% when she's sitting at 100% HP. As an offensive invoker, she could always use more damage, so this is very nice for her. And her fourth talent, Mars, Born and Raised. It reduces her symbol invoking time by 30% and reduces her AP cost by 20%. So this is pretty standard to most invokers, and as such, it's very welcome. Alright, moving on to her battle skills. First up, we have Silent Lightning. Unleash a stream of lightning. Occasionally silences foes. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 220%. It does 10 hits, costs 23 AP, and it has a lightning element. I would say this is one of her less useful attacks. You could use it technically, but she just has so much better stuff. Her second skill, Silencing Starlight. Have a star release light rays. Occasionally silences foes. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 440%, does 1 hit, costs 36 AP, and it has a light element. This attack is amazing. Does a lot of damage. Because of Celine's AP reduction, it doesn't even cost that much AP, and it will pretty much always hit because it has a type of tracking element to it, so very nice overall. Her third skill, Silencing Sunflare. Focus light rays on your foe. Occasionally silences foes. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 570%. It does 6 hits, costs 42 AP, and it has a light element as well. This is, I would say, Celine's strongest attack. The only problem is that it does not have any form of tracking, which means if you're fighting a boss that moves around a lot, you probably won't get the max amount of damage out of it. So if you're going to use this, make sure you're fighting an enemy that stays stationary. And then lastly, we have Silencing Cyclone. Manifest a thunderstorm. Occasionally silences foes. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 700%. It does 6 hits, costs 50 AP, and it has a lightning element. This is the exact same as Miria's Plasma Cyclone, which means it's amazing for clearing out the mazes. It can attack the entire stage, and it has massive amounts of hit stun, which means any tiny mobs that get caught in this attack are most likely going to die. Really good for when you're fighting large groups of enemies. And her rush is called Silent Southern Cross. Rain stars down in a cross pattern. Often silences foes. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 3500%, and it has a light element. And as a post-rush buff, it increases Celine's int by 50% for 20 seconds. Alright, so this rush is pretty standard, does a decent amount of damage. You would put it about halfway through the chain, and of course the int plus 50% is also really good for Celine, who's obviously an offensive invoker, thus she can do more damage after her rush. And plus, Celine's rush gain is also very good actually, so normally you are able to chain multiple rushes together, so you can rush, do a lot of damage, and then rush again. Okay, now let's move on to the weapons. First, I recommend the Illuminated Staff, which you can unfortunately only get from the gacha. This staff increases your light elemental damage by 40%, it gives you a 10% chance to crit, and it also increases your crit damage by 15%, and if you limit break it, it gives you an attack damage reduction, but that's not really necessary. The main draw here is the light damage increase and the potential crits, which even further increase your DPS. So it's definitely worth throwing a pull at the guaranteed gacha if you're planning on maining Celine. But if you can't get your hands on the Illuminated Staff, We also have the Winged Scepter, which you can get from the Staff Coin Shop. So transmute a couple weapons into the Staff Coins, and then you can get your hands on the Winged Scepter, which increases your int by 15%, and it also gives you a nice recovery, static recovery, at Limit Break 3. And for accessories, I recommend the Hawkeye Charm, which, who saw that coming, an offensive accessory. And this is, of course, if you're not running the Illuminated Staff, the factors on these two, the Hawkeye Charm and the Illuminated Staff, don't stack. So if you are running the Illuminated Staff, I recommend you go with any of the other damage-reducing accessories. If you aren't running Illuminated Staff, just go with this. Alright, now moving on to her battle skill setup. First of all, I recommend Silencing Starlight. So as I said, this is Celine's most reliable damaging tool, so it's definitely something you would want to bring along most of the time. And then secondly, we have Silencing Sunflare, which is one of Celine's highest damaging spells, so why wouldn't you bring this? You can definitely make some good use of this during Element Burst Stun. And then lastly, I recommend Silencing Cyclone to take care of the smaller mobs, and you know, sometimes you just get really frustrated and you need to let loose with your thunderstorm thingy. You could technically switch this out for the other one, Silent Lightning, if you want something that costs a little less AP, but personally I've never found a use for that, so just go with Silencing Cyclone. And then let's take a look at the combo. So, if you're running the setup that I described earlier, one combo could look something like this. A normal attack into Silencing Starlight, into Silencing Sunflare, into as many Silencing Starlights as you can fit. You could also swap out Silencing Sunflare for Silencing Cyclone if you're in a match with a bunch of other smaller mobs, so that you can easily kill them like that. But if you're fighting one enemy, it's a good idea to use Silencing Sunflare. So this combo builds a lot of rush really quickly, and it does a lot of consistent damage, so definitely recommend using this against moving targets. Now, if the enemy happens to be Element Burst Stun, you could go with a little bit more damage. That would be normal attack into Silencing Sunflare, into Silencing Starlight, into another Silencing Sunflare. So this combo does a bit more damage than the other one, but like I keep saying, Silencing Sunflare really needs a stationary target to work. And as always, don't forget the Charge Assault, the first attack after your normal attack, because that reduces cast time by a lot. So if you would do the first combo, it would be a normal attack, and then you Charge Assault, Silencing Starlight, and then you just use the other ones normally. So in conclusion, Celine is great when you're using her in a party with other invokers, because of her ability to buff the int for the entire party, and she's actually the second invoker in our game that can do that, so that's pretty good right now. She herself is also the first light invoker that we've gotten, and she can do some good damage. In the future she'll do even more, but right now she's sitting pretty good as a light invoker, and because of that Silencing Cyclone skill, she's also very useful for the Maze of Tribulation. So if you're having trouble with any floor, just bring a Celine and spam Silencing Cyclone. Overall, she can deal some decent damage, and if you like her, don't feel too bad about investing resources in her. And that does it for the Celine character guide. So, I made some changes to the layout here, as you've probably seen. Hope you guys like it, and I think I'm going to do Sarah next. I kind of have to do her because the Christmas characters are coming next week, and I do want to cover those as well, so should probably get Sarah out of the way now. But, hope that was helpful, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Peace!